In this video we'll have a look at Blender's interface, identify the main elements that appear within it, and see how to adjust the size and nature of the various areas. When we open Blender for the first time, it displays a splash screen at the center of its main window. This is the one and only time you'll see that version of the splash screen, since on all other occasions we'll see a different one. In the bottom half of this splash screen, we are offered various options and settings. The first of these allows us to load the preferences and settings we may have created for any previous version of Blender we have been using. In the video we can see that we've previously been using Blender 4.0, and so it's the settings from that version that is offered in the splash screen. The second button is a link to the Blender web page, which gives details of the latest features that have been added to this version of Blender. Next, we can select the language displayed by Blender. And the keyboard shortcuts that we want implemented. We can use the shortcuts defined in the current version of Blender, those defined in earlier versions, or those normally used as an industry standard. The Select With option allows us to specify which mouse button is used to select objects in our scene when we are working on our model. Historically, Blender used to use the right button, but now it uses the more traditional left button. In the past, the spacebar has always been used to activate the search operation. Now we can select from three options, the default being to play any animation we have created in our scene. Theme gives us options for the look of the Blender interface, with each of the choices offering a different combination of background, foreground, and text colors. The final part of this splash screen's options allows us to save our new settings, which will then be used in any future Blender scenes we go on to create. Every other time we open the program, we'll see a different splash screen. This one shows two main sections. The first of these is the initial layout of the Blender screen we want to use. We'll see the various options later, but for the moment we'll stick with the general option since this is the default layout. The second section is a short list of the most recently opened Blender project files. Clicking on one of these names will reload that project. To start a new project, all we need to do is select a layout from the splash screen or just click anywhere in the main Blender window. This will make the splash screen disappear and leave us with our new project ready to be worked on. As we can see, the Blender window is divided into several areas. At the top of the window is the top bar. This area contains the main menu and layout options. Immediately below the top bar is the largest and most important area, the 3D viewport editor. This is where we see the 3D scene we are constructing. Below the 3D viewport is the timeline editor. This is used when creating animations, allowing us to play, pause, and move to any part of the animation. And on the very bottom of the window is the status bar, which lists the various additional options available for the operation currently being performed on our scene. To the right top of the 3D viewport is the outliner editor. This area shows the items currently placed within our scene. Typical elements are meshes, lights, and cameras. And below the outline editor is the properties editor. The vertical set of icons act as tabs to different pages of settings. Some of these pages contain settings for the currently selected element, while others affect the whole scene. Before we look at each of these areas in a bit more detail, we'll examine ways adjusting the size and number of work areas within the Blender window. The simplest way of changing the format of the Blender window is to select a different layout from the top bar. For example, choosing shading gives us the layout shown here. Before continuing, we'll return to the usual layout, called Layout. We can change which editor appears in an existing area of Blender. In the top left corner of each editor is an icon which is unique to that editor. If we click on any of these icons, we are presented with a panel showing all the available editors. As you can see, there are quite a few. Clicking on one of these options will change the editor displayed in that area of the window. Here we have changed the outliner editor's area to display the text editor. We can resize areas by dragging on its edge. Notice that areas that have a common width or height change size together. We can also split an existing editor into two separate editors. To do this, we can drag on the very small area beside a curved corner of an editor. Dragging can be vertical or horizontal. The areas we create in this way are completely independent, so we can, for example, have different viewpoints in each of our 3D viewport areas. And, of course, we can change any of these areas to display a different editor. To merge two areas, we need to move the mouse pointer over a common edge and then right-click to produce a pop-up menu. From this we can select Join Areas. Now we move the mouse into the area that is to be eliminated. Notice that the mouse pointer changes shape to point into the area to be deleted. If we try to merge two areas of different height, when merging horizontally, or of different width, when merging vertically, Blender splits the larger of the two into two parts, as we can see in this example. We can see from the pop-up menu's options that it offers an alternative way of splitting an area. Once a split option is selected, a vertical or horizontal line, which we get depends on the option chosen, appears. This can then be dragged to define the size of the new area. When working within a specific editor, such as the 3D viewport, we can temporarily have it occupy most of the Blender window by pressing either Ctrl and the spacebar. Or Ctrl, Alt, and the spacebar. To return to the previous layout, we need to press the same combination of keys a second time.